Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Rover Product Enhancements version 5.13, Multi-Language Support and More, presented by Stayntouch Implementation Consultant, Christopher Devlin. I'm your host, Erin Fisher, the content writer here at Stayntouch. Today's presentation will cover how you can get the most out of Rover version 5.13 product release. In this webinar, we will explore significant expansions to language support in Rover, review changes to the handling of authorization rules for day use reservations, identify new search fields added to the journal, explore stationery updates requested in our feature forum, discover how to customize folio number labels for your hotel, review new room location instructions added to the room configuration in Zest Station, and reviews country-specific enhancements to police exports. We will have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will answer them in the order that they are received at the end. And that's all I have right now. Chris, I'm going to hand the presentation over to you.
Thanks so much, Erin. You just want to let me know once you can see my screen. That would be great.
Yep. All right.
Okay. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. I hope you can see my screen okay. So we have quite a few things to go through today, which we're excited to share with you. Much of it is language related, which is very exciting. I'm going to begin by going through our authorization rules for day use reservations, however, and let's talk about what that is briefly. So many of you are aware that within your settings, we have our authorization rules set up under hotel and actually under reservations and reservation settings. And you'll see we have a per night calculations for incidentals, generally for incidentals, and many of your hotels will have this. Previously, when we were calculating for our day use reservations, there are no night components to that, and it was actually skipping this. Now it will take that into effect. So for example, in my property, if I had a day use reservation, now we would also be calculating our $50 in this case, incidental authorization on top of the room and tax for our day use reservations. So that's our authorization rules for day use reservations being factored in. And that's for our room and tax or just for a flat amount for incidentals only too. Moving on to our fun languages portion. So I have a little image to share here. Our Rover Stationery has been expanded to support additional languages, and I have a list of some of these languages on screen here. There are more that were already in the system. So our customer support team is actually in the process right now of putting in corresponding translations in place for these languages. So it is a work in progress, and if you're interested in activating or finding out which of these languages are actually available for use currently, or more importantly, if you're actually interested in helping us with translations for any of these languages in the system, if you are, then please do reach out to your customer support manager, your client success manager, or you can open a ticket with support just indicating your interest. And we'd be more than happy to have your help with this. As I mentioned, we're very excited to be moving forward with this in our product. So any help that we can get with that would be greatly appreciated. That being said, let's actually take a look within the system at where these languages are activated and some of the different areas where we can now actually change some translations within the system. So I'm going to navigate here in my property to hotel and staff. And on the right-hand side in hotel and staff, we have this languages option, and I toggled on use languages, and I've gone ahead and activated some of the languages here within the system already. Now you'll see that we have English here marked as a default. If I wanted to change the default language, you see if I hover over language, it'll say make default. So I can make default German, I can make default French. What is that actually applying to? This pertains to the guest card language on file. If we don't have a populated language on a guest card, what language should we use as default? That's the question that's answering for us. So if I jump over to the front end of the system and take a quick look here, and I'll just go into my own profile, because I have languages activated, you see we have the option here to select a guest language. It's just telling the system what language should we use as default, and in my system it happens to be English, but I've gone ahead and selected German for this particular guest. So that's how we can set the default within the system for the language that should be used whenever that language is not set on a particular guest card. With regards to different settings for languages within the Stationery and within Zest, so we've given the ability to translate some fields within the system. Specifically, we can now allow users to translate 5 elements, including rate name, add-ons, charge codes, room types, as well as deposits and cancellation rules. So let's take a quick look at how we do that very quickly. So I'm going to navigate to my settings in the back end of the system. And we're going to start by looking at our rates. So if I navigate to rates and rates, I've done this already with a few examples just to save some time. I'm going to choose my best available rate. And again, because I have languages activated, I can navigate into rate details, and you'll see I have this toggle on the top right where I can choose my different languages. So my name translation and my description translation initially will be in English, but if I toggle this over to German, you'll see I have that translated over there into German. Now I've done that translation myself. I populated those values myself. The system's not doing that for me, but this then allows that to be the translation that would appear when we're selecting that language as the language that should be used in the stationery or on the guest card. So in this case, it will be Tagesrate instead of best available rate. Similarly with our add-ons, if I navigate to add-ons, I've done a similar thing with our early arrival. Here we have it in English, early arrival. If I toggle this over to German again, I've just chosen German as a simple one. We have the German values populated here for us. If I go to financials and charge codes, I've taken my room charge, and we can actually do our charge code and our description, bearing in mind that some charge codes are alpha, not just numeric. So it might behoove some hotels to actually do that, to do a language translation for the code itself. For lots of our properties, it is numeric that they're using, so that doesn't make much of a difference. But in case it does, we've got the translation for the code too. But if I go ahead and toggle this over to German, you'll see that we can change the description there too to any of those languages that we choose. Under our room types, similarly, I've gone ahead and chosen my single room, and I have the room type name that I can translate as well as the description that I can translate. So I'm going to toggle that over to German. And we have an Einzelzimmer and then a description that we have in there too. Hopefully my German isn't too bad there. And then also with our deposits and cancellation rules. So if I navigate to reservations, if I navigate to rates and rules and restrictions, and I've done one example with a cancellation penalty for my 24 hours prior to arrival. In our description translation, once again, I can toggle that over to my language of choice, in this case, German, and we can have that display in that language when we have that on the confirmation or terms and conditions, whatever it might be. So that's how we can change some of our text fields into different languages that we have active within the system. Moving on to some of the other updates that we've made, we've also added a search field to the journal, specifically to the summary, the revenue, and the payment screens. So let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to navigate to financials and journal. And when we open this up, just give us a moment to load. If I pull down the tab here, you'll notice that we now have this search for option where we can select different values. We can search by room number, by amount, by reservation or account number, by invoice or folio number, and by AR invoice number. So if I look, we're looking at the 11th of March. My hotel is in the past here, but that's totally fine. So I'm going to navigate over to my revenue tab here, and I have some values we can search for. So if I look into my rooms here and room charge, I have quite a few different options I can choose from. But we're gonna search for just Jerry Rice as an example. So if I wanted to search for just Jerry Rice, I can look under reservation or account name in this case, and I can type in Rice or Jerry, and it's going to go out and search for me and return just that one option. And there we can see the specific charges for Jerry Rice. Similarly, we can do the same thing with room number. And in this case, it was room number 12. It's going to return that value for me. We can look for specific amounts. This is very useful for the finance team. Whenever you're trying to trace exactly where a specific amount might have come from or where it got charged to. So all my $99 are going to appear here for a given date range as well, bearing in mind that we can specify a range to search for here too. Confirmations or account numbers. That's the reservation or account number. That just equals the confirmation number in this case. So I can go ahead and put in an example I have here, 101428. And again, that's going to bring me back to my Jerry Rice. And then we have invoice or folio number, which we can also do. Now, invoices would be under payments because, again, invoices are generated when we have a payment. So if I choose an invoice number, we can go ahead and choose, I think I had one here under 137. And then we have an invoice that was for $4.17, checked out to American Express. So really nice and easy way to search. We also do have as well the ability to search for an AR invoice that only appears under the summary tab, but you can also search for AR invoices in the AR module as well. But that's just another area for you to search for it right there directly. So we think that's a really nice enhancement for our ability to search for specific charges and specific guests within date ranges. And we're hoping our customers will see some real value from that enhancement. Another couple of things that we've added to the system, we have added the ability to add a unique folio number label. Now this is something that would need to be done by Stayntouch admin. So if you do have a need for this, and it is generally a requirement that is region specific, but if you do have a need for it, then reach out to us through your CSM, through your Client Success Manager, and this is something we can activate for you. I have an example here from the release notes that we can refer to. It basically adds a field onto the invoice, which you can have a custom label for, and then also a custom sequence for. So this can be useful for maybe chains that have multiple properties and they just like to have a specific folio number and sequence for a particular property or for particular properties. So that's a new option that we've added. Again, that would be something you would reach out to your CSM for if you would like to have that activated. We have also, at the request of many of our customers, added the rate, name, and number of guests to our confirmations that are being sent from the system. So you can see an example of that here. We have the number of guests, 1 adult and 0 children, and also a rate here, which is just called commission rate. That might be your best available rate, might be your AAA rate, whatever that might be. We've added that to our confirmation at the request. This is one of those things that many of our customers have asked for, and we're happy to deliver that in this release. Some of the other updates that we've had pertain to our police exports. So we've added the addition of the Spain-Barcelona police export file. That's obviously something that is good for our customers in Barcelona. We've also added the ability to default some values on our police exports, specifically the country and the nationality values on these police exports. Now, our police exports are generally region specific, and they are also something that our admin would need to activate for your property. Most of you, if you do have the requirement for police exports, would already be aware of that, and it is something we probably would have activated for you already. But if that is something that you think that you would need and that we haven't activated for you already, please do reach out and we can have that discussion with you. Reach out to your Client Success Manager and we can take the conversation from there. But for those of you that do have this already, and if you would like to default the country and nationality values, that can be done under settings, under stats and reports. You can see your exports there and you can default those values in that area. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about today was the ability that we've added to include room location instructions into our Zest check-in. So we can have guests check in on the kiosk and we can actually include instructions on how the guests can get to the room on the kiosk. I've got a video here that'll show how that looks. It's a bit of a quick video, but it's an example. And I just recorded this a little earlier today. So we have a guest checking in on the kiosk, entering their name as usual, bring up their reservation details. And I'm going to pause it on the screen, which will instruct them on how to get to their room. Which is right here actually. So they are in room number 16. To reach your room, please take the elevator to your right to the first floor and turn to your left as you exit. So this is freeform text and it's on a room by room basis. So we can have this be whatever we want it to be. Where does this get set up? It's actually set up within the room number itself. So I'm going to navigate to my settings and I'm going to go to rooms and rooms. And then within the room number itself, there will be a field, room location instructions, in which you can type in the instructions for that specific room. Now, this does need to be activated, just like a lot of other things I've mentioned today. This does need to be activated by Stayntouch. So if you would like to have this activated, please reach out to your client success manager so we can schedule this. I do recommend it's something that we schedule for you because once we activate it, it will have some placeholder text for all of your rooms. So it's the kind of thing that you're going to want to activate and do when you don't have too much guest flow, maybe something you want to do at night. So you can update this when guests aren't really interacting with the system, so that when they come to it, it'll be fresh and you'll have all the information in there. That's just a piece of advice. But it is a toggle that will activate for you in the back end of the system. And once that's activated, you can go into each of the room numbers, describe to the user how they should get to that room, and then that will appear during the Zest check-in flow for each user as they check in, which we think will be super useful, especially for the non-assisted guest-initiated check-ins, where it is just the guest themselves who's doing the check-in. And that concludes everything that I had to go through on the webinar for today. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Erin for any questions that we might have.
Great. Thanks, Chris, for that insightful presentation. I would now like to turn over the floor to questions. Remember, you can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel, and I'll give you a couple seconds to type in those questions. All right. First question is from John. Do room direction instructions only work on the kiosk, or does it work on Zest emails too?
Oh, it does actually go through on the Zest email too. So as they get their check-in email with the room number, confirming that they checked in, it will also be included on that email. That's a great question. Yeah.
All right. And it seems like no more questions right now. I'll give you another couple seconds. All right, it seems we don't have any more questions. So since there aren't any more questions, I'd like to take the floor to offer some final thoughts. So today we explored significant expansions to language support in Rover. We reviewed changes to the handling of authorization rules for day use reservations. We identified new search fields added to the journal. And we explored stationery updates requested in our feature forum. Discovered how to customize folio number labels for your hotel, and reviewed new room location instructions added to room configuration in Zest Station. And then finally, we reviewed country-specific enhancements to police exports. And then with that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you all for coming. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at erin@stayntouch.com. And thanks again.